Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? There is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Ghee Bouche from out there in the Pacific Northwest. Ghee has been Bigfooting for 13 years out there. He's interviewed dozens of credible witnesses as a member of the BFRO, and he seeks a greater understanding of the mystery of Sasquatch. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show today, Ghee.
Hey, sure am I. How you doing?
Doing great, man. I was just editing some video I took out in Oak Ridge, Oregon in the Willamette National Forest, and I'm like, man, I gotta get back out there. It's just, you guys got it good out there.
Those are beautiful mountains. Yeah. I always try and get out as much as I can. You got to take advantage of it when you live in the Northwest.
Absolutely. I agree. I probably wouldn't really be at home. But Ghee, we were talking before the show started, and I think it would be great would you mind starting with how you got into this whole subject of Bigfoot to begin with?
Yeah, I had always been a person getting out in the mountains ever since I was a kid. I lived down in California, so I'd go up to Cascade Mountains, but the Sierras a lot, and do big backpacking trips. And I was always around a lot of the wildlife down there. We have more of a prominence of bears than we have up here. You will typically see bears at campsites all over the place. You really have to be aware of those guys. So when I first moved up here, I felt like it was a little bit more rugged, less people, so I'm going to see bears all the time. And it was something that kind of shocked me. I really didn't see bear prints or scat unless you go up to certain areas of the mountains. It was not a common thing, but I'd carry around bear mace just in case to protect my family at the time. When I first started going out around here, and I was not into Bigfooting, about 2011, 12, me and my wife celebrating her birthday with my two daughters who were 5 and 6. We decided, let's go out to Mora Campgrounds out by Forks. We've never been out there before. This will be fun. It's February. It's going to be cold as hell, but we'll bring tons of blankets so the kids can be bundled up, and hand warmers. And at the time, the kids, we had taken them out since they were babies out camping, and they were perfectly fine with it. So we picked a spot. It was and you can find this spot at Mora Campgrounds. They have the whole campground shut down except for one area that was by the river. And we picked a spot that was the most southwestern point in that location that you could camp. And all day long, we're having fun. I like having beers. I'm having beers. My kids are playing around. Me and my wife are taking them for bicycle rides and everything else. And we've got a box sitting there on the ground. And I'm thinking from the time I've been up here that I'm not seeing any bear tracks, bears. It's wintertime. They've got to be hibernating. There's going to be nothing around that's going to mess with recyclables at all. So we kept him in a box. And around 11:30, we had the girls tucked in already. Me and my wife were done. We're ready to tuck in. We've been playing cards and games and things. And we tucked in. So we got in the tent, and we were flanking our girls on either side with bear mace just to be safe, again, keeping our kids safe. And we were laying there, and we heard our recycling box tip upside down and just dump on the ground. It was a good sound. Whatever it was, at the time, we're thinking whatever it was, it drug it about 20 feet and just dumped the recyclables out. We had 2 coolers out there that could easily be opened. They weren't Yeti coolers, and they had everything in them. They had beer, drinks for the kids. They had salami, bacon, eggs, all the kind of food you can imagine you need for several days camping. And we thought, oh, great, why is there a bear up right now? There's a bear out there getting to our stuff. And it actually walked past our tent on my wife's side, and it was some very heavy feet. It brushed against the tent. My wife looked at me with big eyes, and I put my finger in front of my mouth, and I said, I didn't say anything, but I just made a motion like, don't move, don't make a sound, just stay quiet, don't move. And the girls were looking at us, and we're saying to them, don't, stay quiet. The thing walked away, apparently, I thought, and we were laying there, and I said to my wife, I'm going to get out, I'm going to put the coolers away, check, see what happened. I've got a spotlight. I'm going to just make sure this bear gets out of here. I'm still baffled as to why in February there's a bear out roaming around. But we were in the tent. I got out. My wife said, be careful. And I'm sure all the neighbors really love this at 12:30 at night. I turned my car alarm on, scare the bear away. And I got out with a flashlight, a spotlight, and aimed it around in the area. And I said, you get out of here, bear, bad bear. And got out of the tent with the bear mace ready, cleaned up the recyclables, put the material away, locked up the truck, and I heard some movement down in the lagoon below us where there was a patch of fairly deep water, 3 or 4 feet deep, muddy on the bottom. I had gone out that day and seen this, and down below there are also beaver cuts in the ground where the beavers can hide from the eagles, and I guess it's their way of escaping. But that space down there had mud here and there, patches of mud, beaver cuts everywhere, and a lagoon right below us by about 50 feet away. And so I shined the light down there. I said, get away from here, bad bear. It's just the only bad bear. I got back in the tent, told my wife, hey, it's got to be okay now. We're fine. That's no big deal. That thing's definitely gone, without a doubt. It's scared off. Got in the tent. We're laying there. 15 minutes later, my wife goes to sleep. My youngest daughter goes to sleep next to her. And I'm laying there with my oldest daughter. She's still awake. And we hear something from Macaw Indian Reservation about 500 yards away jump in the Quileute River, and it was a loud splash. I thought, man, that's a big bear. That's a big animal. Wow. And my oldest daughter was laying there, 6 years old, so she's down, I'm scared. I said, oh, honey, there's steelhead out there right now. There's guys fishing for steelhead here tomorrow morning. It's just a bear. It's going for food. About 4 minutes later, we hear it getting closer. We hear a huge log or something snapped in half, and again, getting in the water and going across a big puddle. There were a number of dugouts out there where water had filled up when the tide would come in. And I thought, wow, that's getting close. And my daughter was getting scared. I said, honey, just go to bed. I'm here. We're in a tent. We're totally safe. Don't worry about it. About 5 minutes later, everybody's asleep, and I'm laying there, and I hear swishing coming in the water down below. Noted there's a little channel of water. It's not more than 6-7 inches deep, but something was walking towards our space. And I thought, wow, those are big. That's a big sound. That's a very big bear. And it was coming across in the water. And then the craziest thing happened, one of the craziest things about Bigfooting that's ever happened to me. And this, well, again, I had not really thought about Bigfoots as being real. I'd heard about them. I'd camped in the mountains. I'd never seen anything, never had anything happen. A rock the size of a basketball was thrown into the water. And you could hear it hit the water, and then what happens when a big object hits the water, goes up in the air and splashes down in the middle of it. It was followed by 4 more big rocks. Each one, I mean, you could tell it was thrown in the water. It had intention behind it. It was pretty scary because I thought bears don't throw rocks. And there's no way anybody's down there with rocks that big. One, you couldn't carry them. 2, there's no lights down there. There's no light. You could see a light through the tent if somebody was down there with a light. We had not talked to anybody there about Bigfooting. We're looking for Bigfoot, so why would anyone want to play a gag on us or something and be doing that down there? Anyways, after about 5 rocks, and this is something I only learned about years later, and this terrified me when it happened because it was something that I'd never experienced before in my life. And I've heard other people on your program say, you're going to think I'm crazy saying this, and I'm not going to say you're going to think I'm crazy saying this because this has happened to a lot of people, but a voice came into my head and said, don't you ever call me a bad bear. And it came up with a name, and it's hard to remember this name, but it was like Tisquatchete or something. It was a Native American name, and it said, don't you ever call me a bad bear again. And this thing was angry. It was really angry. I don't know if it was an alarm going off, if there was another one the other one was a part of its family. I don't know what was going on, but I didn't sleep until the sun came up. I was petrified. And when it walked away, there was something with it that sounded like a blend between a lamb and a monkey. It was making little sounds, almost like a baby would. And it just walked away. And that was the end of that experience. To me, when that happened, I immediately was like, wow, that was that was incredible. The next day I went down and I took a picture of a 22-inch print in the mud down below, as well as indentations where 4 or 5 of the rocks had been thrown in the mud, and they sunk right into the mud and disappeared in the lagoon. And we had talked to the ranger there and said, hey, have you ever had anything like this happen around here? Because I was oblivious to this. They said, oh yeah, we find prints around the lighthouse area and up on the hill, and people have had experiences here and there and all over the place. And it really awoke me to, wow, how oblivious have I been this whole time to this reality that all these stories I had heard for so many years about how real these things are. And that the Native Americans, I ended up meeting a friend through the BFRO who would speak to the chieftains, and the chieftains would say, we used to trade with them thousands of years ago. They were a part of our community. We had known about them for thousands of years. I ended up looking up the BFRO, and they had an expedition that was set for, I believe it was either July or August, most positive July. And we went up there, and this is a spot that was in between Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams, in the middle of nowhere, 30, 40 miles away from any city, any town at all, just absolutely in the boondocks. And we went out there, and I thought, I'm going to get a jump on this. I'm going to go out there Wednesday. So before many people show up, they're going to be out there Wednesday, the people leading it. This was Kirk Brandenburg, Scott Taylor, and Kevin Jones and several other people that are already very prominently known in the BFRO. And I met them out there, and they said, hey, if you want an experience with these guys, put your tent by the edge of the forest over there, because that's where they come from for some reason. There's no roads over that direction. It's just open. And I thought, and in my head, I thought that experience I had to have been just a fluke. That had to have been something that once in a lifetime you're going to experience something like this. There's no way. Even though I'm way out here in the middle of nowhere, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to have a similar experience in any way, no way. So I go and camp there. The first night, nothing happens. And that's what I expected. I thought, I just got up in the morning, Thursday morning, met some people that showed up. We started hiking away from the main base camp and got about 2.5 miles in from that. There was a gentleman, Chris Bynum, he's out there probably going to listen to this at some point, and Doug Howe, who is another gentleman that was with us, went back there, and we got lost at one point. We're like, where are we at? The map we had wasn't showing. We had a compass, but the road we went to was not on the map, and we thought, now we're lost up here. This is, kind of bad. We couldn't go back where we came from because we went through swamps and hills and thicket, and it was just a mess trying to get to that point. We're standing there. We found a spot walking a little further that was a dugout. It was a space it was very sandy, and there were imprints everywhere. It's just as if there had been a lot of foot traffic in there, not footprints. So it was very sandy. So anything that would leave a print there is going to collapse over time, I would imagine. I don't think you would make a good print in that very sandy material, but there were bones everywhere. These bones didn't have any meat on them. They weren't fresh, and some of them were in patterns. It was very unusual. Everything from elk leg bones, no head pieces, no spines, but lots of leg bones and antlers all over the place. And we thought that was unusual. We're standing there, and something caught my attention to my left in my periphery, and I went to look at it, and as I caught the look of what it was, it went down at a 45-degree angle at a miraculous speed. It was as if it knew it was being looked at, because I didn't see any eyes, but I saw a cone-shaped head that was about 16 inches across at its lowest point. It had hair that was matted down, oily-ish, watery-looking, glistening. The sun glistened off it. We were in the sun. It was 85 degrees and hot up there, and it dove down quickly. And so I thought, immediately my brain's like, bear. There's a bear up here. And I said it to the guys. They're like, quiet down. Let's walk up there calmly. So if it's a bear, we don't want to be attacked by a bear 2 miles away from where we came from. That would be horrendous, trying to get back from a bear attack. And so we went around the corner up the hill, 60 feet away. No tracks, no scat, no movement, no sounds. And we thought, we're still lost. How are we going to get out of here? And to backtrack just a little bit, when I first got there the first day, we went around to a spot not more than half a mile away from where we were at, lost, to a little lake I think it was called Little Mosquito Lake, and looked at it with Kevin Jones and checked it out. They said there'd been activity there before, and went back to the place, and then I spent the night. Skip ahead. we're standing at the edge of this thing. We hear a tick in the forest in the distance, like something's knocking on a piece of wood. And we thought, that's interesting. It's either a woodpecker, beaver. Let's just go over there and look at that. Went to that spot. I broke out my little mini cam at the point this was going on, started recording it. And the sound hit 3 hits. So my friend Chris Bynum at the time hit a log 3 times, and it hit 3 times. So we were like, that's a smart woodpecker. That's weird. So he hit it twice. So then it hit it twice. So he hit it once, it hit it once. And each time we did this, it replicated it exactly each time. And so we followed the sound. We would hit, it would make a sound, and it led us all the way to where I had been at that little mosquito lake, led us right there as if it was trying to get us out of there. If I could just get these dumb creatures out of this space where we normally hang out, that would be great without any interaction. And then we found 11.5-inch prints in the space. They were Bigfoot prints, and they were all over the place, right by the lake on the hillside. So we went down, we told Doug. Doug went up there with this guy, Mike Beers, and this other gentleman that worked for the Finding Bigfoot show, Trevor Bounds, I believe his name was, I think. They all went up there, spent the night. They had an experience that they published. It went on Finding Bigfoot. So if you listeners want to look up season 1, episode 3, I believe, which is squatchier, Oregon or Washington. And they interview Doug Howe, and he speaks to the idea of what happened. He doesn't speak at all about what happened with us, which is fine because they interviewed for 30 seconds, but that takes place. So that night I go back to my tent, and we're expecting Saturday. We did it. We had hellacious thunderstorms that were extremely dangerous with lightning, flooding. It was a really dangerous lightning storm that came through. I thought, I'm going to keep my windows open for now, but if I hear rain outside, as I park my vehicle and right next to me, I could get out, shut my windows, no big deal. I'll be able to get back in my tent quickly because it's only 8 feet away. I had a canopy above the tent to protect it from heat and rain too. And I had a truck parked right in front of me, in front of the tent, backed up against the tent for protection against people driving down the road and things like this. So I was sleeping, dead sleep, and around 2:15 in the morning, I heard what I thought was water. I thought, it's raining early. Let's say, wow, I should probably get up and shut my windows of my truck because that's going to soak my truck inside. And I'm laying there, and then the sound of it slowly stopped, and then I realized it wasn't rain. It was gravel being dumped on the top of my 10-foot canopy on the edge, and it was just slowly falling off the top of my canopy onto the ground. And then I was like, whoa, that's not normal. Like, what's going on here? My brain's more and more, my adrenaline kicks in, and I'm thinking, this is getting strange here. A rock then is held by whatever, hits the metal pole and is drugged down the metal pole as if it's trying to discern what this stuff is that it sees in front of it. And then I'm really like, that's really not right. It sounded just like a good-sized rock, hit the metal pole, and then just slid down it. The canopy and the rain flap in front was left open at nighttime because it was hot during the day. It was hot at nighttime. It was just very warm up there. And suddenly, this hand comes pushing in the middle of where the door is. And these fingers are probably, I've got pretty big hands, pretty good sized hands. I'm not a giant person, but I'm 6 feet, I'm 190, pretty good sized guy. At least more than double my fingers put together. And the hand itself had to have been easily wider from finger to finger, just the 4 fingers that were reaching in of a foot, maybe 14 inches. And you can see each finger clearly. And it pushed in, and half the tent kind of pushed over, and it started sweeping back and forth, trying to touch something. I was all the way at the other wall of the tent in a 6-man tent. And at the point that started happening, my pulse went up in my neck so hard I could feel it. I thought I was going to have an aneurysm because I could feel it up in my head, up in my neck. And I was terrified. I was so terrified that the next day, my entire body broke out in hives. My face, every square inch of my body broke out in blisters. I couldn't believe what was happening. It did that several sweeps, 2 or 3 good sweeps. The tent was pushed over, then it's pulled out and stopped. It didn't make any grunting sounds. There was no smell or anything. It went around the side. I could hear it walk past my head at this point, and I was petrified because I thought now it's going to reach on this side. And it's definitely going to touch me. And I don't want to get up and move because I don't want it to know I'm in here. I want to be anonymous in here and just, I'm panicking. And it goes over and grabs another rock and taps the metal bumper on my truck. And then I heard it stand up, and I didn't hear anything else, no breathing, nothing that would make me go, there's nothing else I could say about what I heard. And then I heard it walk down the road, and that was it. It walked down the road and just walked away. And that was the accumulation of all my points to the point where I was like, I want to be a part of the BFRO. This is fascinating. And I was with them for 6 years. I did private expeditions and public ones. I interviewed dozens and dozens of people. I ended up doing lots of private expeditions with very well-known people, just me and one other person going out in the middle of the woods. And it was a fantastic time. But I can definitely tell you that when somebody wants to see a Bigfoot and they want to go Bigfooting and you have that want to do that, it's not always, even now I'm a lot more brave in doing these things. If I hear something, I go towards the sound and I try and deal with it. I'll talk to it and everything else, but it can still be terrifying, so.
Ghee, that is that's incredible. My goodness. So how far away from you would you say, how close did that hand get to you when it was sweeping back and forth inside the tent?
It got within about 2 or 3 feet. A 6-man tent is about 6 feet across. It was pushing the tent halfway over. So I'd say about 2 or 3 feet. It was close enough. I could have reached out and touched it. The last thing on my mind right then, the only thing I could think about was breathing, my blood pressure going up through my brain, and I had my covers pulled up to my eyes. I was panicking. There was nothing I could think about but survival. Some people might say, why didn't you touch the hand? Or why didn't you get your camera and take pictures? And
no,
it's just not feasible for you to think that way when your brain's in survival panic mode. All you're thinking about is if I can just survive this and have this thing not, because I'm thinking, what if it grabs me? I don't know anything about, at the time, I don't know anything about these things. I don't know what they're capable of. I don't know what happens if they do touch you. Maybe, I don't know. Nothing in my brain was going, do anything but just lay here. Just survive. Hopefully this thing walks away. It was a shock to my brain to think that it was even happening because I just didn't even think something was going to happen like that.
The size of the hand, that almost feels to me that it could have, if your head was, this is tough to even think about, but it you know how you palm a basketball? Like it probably could have palmed your head.
Oh man, easy. There's no one's head out there that's big enough. That thing couldn't have done that. You would have been like a toy. It would be like the size of your hand grabbing a doll, like a little foot tall doll. It was that big of a hand. I didn't see the thumb, but that would make sense if you put your fingers straight forward and you just tried to sweep and touch something. It would make sense that you wouldn't see the thumb, but the fingers were enormous. I mean, it doesn't take too much force to push a tent over. I can go over and just put some weight into a tent, push my 6-man tent over, but it was putting some force into really wanting to see what was in this thing. And I have so many theories about it now that I've been Bigfooting for years, and I've had many more experiences with them and daylight experiences with them, and never seen the top of one like I saw out there ever again. But my theory too was that there must be Bigfoots out there they're very remote. They just don't see humans ever. They never make a decision to go out into any area where there's humans, and maybe they stay in spots where humans never ever go. And therefore, once it saw the cars that were there and the tents and everything else, it was just like baffled, like, what is going on here? Are these my alien friends I've seen before? I don't know. Just so many theories in my head go, why did it do that? And maybe it was just a Bigfoot. Another theory, it was one that had seen humans often, and it very brazen, and it wanted to say, hey, I know you're in there. I don't know why you're coming out here, but I'm here. Just let you know, and I can do this, and I'm okay doing that.
Thinking back of what you saw of the hand when it was in the tent, were there any things that you remember that stick out to you that were like, man, that was really weird how it had that, or its hand looked like that, or any details that just were really weird at the time?
I would say one detail about the fingers, definitively, I know this now from just looking at the fingertips. Sasquatches do not have claws, so we can rule out bear right there. Bears wouldn't reach in sideways like that and do that anyways. Their arms aren't long enough. This, from the edge of the tent where it had to have been, it was reaching in a good 3 or 4 feet, which is a really long arm to reach that far in. And the tips of the fingers were rounded. You could barely see a discernible nail. It was almost not even discernible because it was dark in the tent, but clearly you could see this hand pushing in. But they were just rounded, just very fat and rounded. Other than that, yeah, you couldn't really tell much more than that. And again, too, there's nothing else. Like and the thing is, this, looking back on it, I could say this. It could be possible that there were breathing sounds that were happening, but I had so much blood pressure. If you've ever been scared in your life, so scared, something has terrified you so much, your hearing actually starts going beep, because you're panicking. You might black out. You're so panicked. You're so scared. Your adrenaline is pumping in your body and your blood pressure is so high. So it could have been the possibility. Once the thing walked around and stopped pushing in the tent, my blood pressure started going down a little bit and the pumping in my neck started going down. But just seeing that made me go into a panic mode, an unbelievable panic mode that I'd never experienced before. So just to give a little background of myself, when I was my teens, 18 to 20, I was a firefighter. I went to fire houses on fire. I helped rescue people. I was a big wave surfer. I was almost killed 8 times, big waves. I had great whites go under me. I had great whites come at me, 2-ton great whites coming right at me in the water with their fin up. None of that made me have such an adrenaline rush that my pulse was going up through my throat. I literally thought I was going to have an aneurysm or a heart attack because I was like, I don't know if I can handle this much blood pressure in my body. I've never, ever experienced this before. So it is possible that in the height of that, there could have been breathing too. Out of all the other things that I had noticed, there's a portion of me that wishes I was able to be braver right then and just zip open the tent, fantasy mode, zip it open and just look at it, see what's right there and have that experience. But I almost think in retrospect, even if I had been able to do that or grab the hand or take a picture with my camera that I had at that point or anything like this, I think I would have passed out. I think from the stress and actually if I'd seen something too, I think I would have probably literally passed out.
Oh yeah. Your body already being at the point that it was, if you tagged on actually seeing a Bigfoot, it would have been the best option would have been passing out probably. Just, I don't think
it probably would have been good. If I had a camera on myself inside the tent, seeing myself pass out, that would have been a good one for YouTube.
Oh man, you'd be king of YouTube for a while. So if I had this happen, the kind of person I would have been, I would have spent days and days scouring the internet for pictures of a hand that looks similar to what I saw. Is that anything that you've done and found anything that's similar? Or?
I've not thought about that. It's a good question. I've never thought to do that. To me, all these years has just been an experience where, when somebody says, hey, tell me an experience you've had, and I've got dozens of experiences with them I can rattle off, but that's been something I should do that. It's not something I've ever done. It's just been one of those experiences where I've been like, wow, that's one to add to the playbook of like, what happens if this happens in the future? What could I do? Now, when I'm in tent, I have a recorder going all the time. I have a recorder going inside the tent, and I have a recorder going outside the tent. I have my phone ready for pictures. I have a thermal camera. I have so many things. And sometimes I might even rake the front of my tent with a rake to make rake lines on the ground if it's really rough, so that if something does step on those rake lines, you'll be able to see a pattern and see a footprint. Where I was at, the ground around there, it was summertime. The ground was incredibly hard, like concrete. Like if you took a pick to that, it would probably bounce off. No way you're seeing footprints anywhere there. In my latency of being really aware of them and everything else, I didn't think to look for hair on the ground. I did tell Scott, I did tell Kevin, I did tell Kirk, I did tell those guys, hey, this experience happened. So we went over there and looked, and they didn't even see anything. There was nothing that we could say, okay, definitively, we know this happened because look at this. But, however, I would say the gentleman, and this is an important point, who was down, I don't know who this guy is at this point. At one point, I had his information. He had come in Thursday night and was camped just down the way from me, and he had heard it walk down the road and walk away. So I had only one credible witness at the time that did hear it walk down the road and walk away, but no prints or anything. And Scott and them, apparently I didn't see them find anything like, hey, oh my God, look at this. This is an important thing to take. Let's take a sample of this. Yeah.
Did the hand and the arm, was it visible that you could see like hair hanging off the arm or any color to hair if it had it or anything like that?
No, the tent, if you look these tents up, it's called a habitat. I don't know if they sell them anymore, but I'm always a little bit personal, especially then personably, I like privacy in a tent. So I close the flaps that you can see in with. I think if that had been open, I would have seen out it and seen it definitively for sure. But because it's going through it, it's a tent, it's pushing into a tent. You couldn't see any hair or the body or anything like this. It was just all you could see are the giant fingers trying to touch something in the tent, you know?
Oh man, that's such an incredible thing to have happen. And how long did it take for you to share this when you got home, or was it a thing where you held on to it for a while before you shared with your family?
I actually, my wife had been with a friend down in Oregon, and they were at her house. And this is just like a little side shoot of how this affected me, which was interesting. At first, I came out of there because I hadn't been drinking for 4 or 5 days. They said no alcohol up there. So I said, fine, I'll follow your rules, no drinking. It's not tough for me to do that. I think that makes sense. So you don't want to say you had an experience and they're like, were you on anything? So I didn't drink up there. So when I came out of the mountains, I was like, wow, like that, everything that happened up there, I need a drink. I'm going to have some margaritas. So I came into a Mexican food restaurant, and these people were all partying at this table, this big old family. They were laughing and talking. And I came in, I hadn't showered in 4 days, and I looked like I had seen a ghost. My eyes were like saucer plates. They were huge. And I looked, and everybody went quiet in the place. Just the vibe changed immediately, like a drop of a dime. Like you hear a pin drop in the place. And I was like, table for one. Sat me down. And then I went down, and after I had some lunch or coming out of the mountains, a couple drinks, margaritas, went down and met my wife. And they're like, what happened? They're like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I need another drink. I just can't. I don't know how to put to words what happened up there. You're going to think I'm nuts. This is like unbelievable. This happened, then this happened, then we did this. I talked to him for an hour and a half. Immediately, my daughters, who were, I don't know, 7 or 8 at the point, or not even, no, they were like 5, 6. They're about the same age at that point. It was only like 6 months later that I went from that first place at Mora Campgrounds to that expedition. Same year, 2012. They had really big eyes, and they were looking at me like I was telling some kind of a fantasy story. And I was trying to cut out things that were really scary because I'm like, they're staring at me. I don't want to scare my kids. But it is an important point to recognize that to this day, in terms of Mora Campgrounds, skipping way back to that beginning of things, she won't go out there and camp anymore. She does not feel comfortable out there. She's literally scared of that area. And I'm planning to go out actually this summer with a group to the same spot where this incident I'm telling you about, reached in the tent, happened, and try and hike to the same areas where we found the bones and everything. So I'm going to do a mini expedition with a group of people out there that I know and trust, and I've been with for quite a long time. So
that is amazing. Did anything else interesting happen during that expedition that you were part of at that time?
Other than the lightning storm, we didn't have, there were a variety of things that happened to other people that they had their experiences of things, but I can't speak to that because I wasn't a part of it. So whenever I tell some experience I had in Bigfooting, I speak to the experience of my own experience. When somebody says they believe in Bigfoot, I say, I don't think you should do that. Don't listen to other people and believe in Bigfoot. Well, for your show, maybe this is a good thing. It's entertaining, right? That's interesting. But I really say, hey, take somebody with you trust, take something to protect yourself out in the woods, bear mace or what have you, whatever you need. Go out into an area that is remote. And if you've heard stories in the area, check it out, but make sure you take somebody with you. Be safe. Take a small group of people. Stay together and experience something that you can't explain. Because I've heard of so many stories with so many other people, and you can tell when somebody's really telling you the truth. They're not, out of all the people I interviewed over the years in the BFRO, I'd talked to some people, I was like, that's just total, that did not happen, I can tell. And other people, you can hear their voice shake, like mine does a little bit when I recount some of these things, because it's a real experience, and it really happened. And it's then, even now, it's frightening. It was frightening then, and to recount it and relive it, it's frightening now. And so when I hear other people having experiences in these situations, on these expeditions, online or something like this, I take it with a grain of salt, and I don't try and tell someone else their story, because that's not my place to act like I'm them, and that's something I really know what that was like. And whether they're telling the truth or not, that's up to somebody else's opinion at that point, if they really believe that or not. But out of all the people I interviewed, I found quite a lot of them were really credible. And the ones that weren't, you could easily tell.
Yeah, no, I respect your viewpoint on that for sure. After you had this experience with the arm coming into your tent, how did that affect the way that you looked at Bigfoot, or did it send you on this crazy quest for a few years where you just you were just engrossed into the subject?
My wife remembers me saying things like, okay, the group's going out to Bumping Lake again. Bob Gimlin's going to be out there, and Ron Moorhead's going to be out there. Scott's going to be, like, the whole group. It was, I felt like I'd found my people at that point. I was like, and my wife's really supportive of me. She is the best person on the planet. She's the most godly, angelic, supportive person you would ever meet. And she supported me through, I'm a musician. She supported me through years of, you need to go play music with your buds, go do that. You need to go Bigfooting, go do that. You need to go fishing, go do that. Camp by yourself, go do that. It's amazing. I have to call her out for amazing support in my life. But then when I had those experiences, I was like, I need to go out to Bumping Lake almost every weekend, because there's things going on. And we had lots of experiences out there too that were like amazing experiences with Bigfoot. That I found a print that was 16 inches that I kept, just huge print. It was so deep in the ground. We had this guy, Jeff Robinson, who tried to stomp on the ground. Jeff at the time weighed 250, 260. He's 6'4", 6'5". He's a big guy. 13-inch footprint, shoes, and he couldn't make any print on the ground. And we didn't have a plaster of Paris to cover the print. The print was a good 3 inches into the ground, and there was another print of the other side of the foot, 6-7 feet away. And then a third one on its toe as if it started running. All kinds of experiences. I went out there every weekend. My wife was just like, you're going out there again? I was like, I have to. Like, it ended up at a point where I broke off from those groups and going out with them. And I went with my own guys. And then that subsided, and those guys moved away and did other things. And now I just go out with a couple of people once in a while. And I don't do the BFRO expeditions anymore, and I'm not really a part of the BFRO. I don't check they have a background site you can check and look at, and I'm sure I could log in again and look at and invite somebody to tell me their story and everything else, but I just don't do that as much. I had so many experiences that I'm like, these things are definitely alive and out there, and if you go out in the woods and you're camping and you have an experience, then great, that's fantastic. And I've had experiences now more recently where a piece of wood the size of 5-6 inches in circumference was hit on a tree, and then a branch that big was just torn off the tree 80 feet in front of us. As one of my good friends and another guy named Dave Grant were walking up a trail, and it was right in front of us, broad daylight. It was incredible. Now that's what I do. Now I wouldn't say I'm retired from Bigfoot. I still do it, and I have a channel called Out Squatching where I post videos, and it's just a baby channel. It's not like your channel. You have a beautiful channel, but it's just in development. It's mostly for me going out having experiences with people, and not unlike you interview people. I just want to go out and post experiences and show people how to camp and review camping gear and things like this for fun.
That's awesome, because I think it takes both of those type of media formats. At least that's my personal. I like both of those, like the channels where you're interviewing the person that had the experience, but then also the people like yourself or an Alex Petikoff or Tate Hieronymus, where you're actually going out into the field and documenting that for people that cannot go out themselves. Is it possible? And I was laughing before because not that I was laughing at you, but because I get that a lot, especially after going out to Oregon. And I'm not as deep into this whole fieldwork thing, but I get how it grabs a hold of you. Is it even possible to explain to a person who hasn't been out there and had it just grab a hold of your focus? Why is it that you get so enamored?
I think I've always been one to have an aspect of myself that I love the mysterious. I love the mystery of life that I can't explain, things that are incredible in life. My father, coming from his genes, he was a brilliant scientist, like an Einstein level scientist. He taught himself up to a PhD level by the time he was 18 years old, mathematics, so he could design radar and teach it to other people by the time he was 19 that were full on college educated people, that he would teach them how to design and build radar systems. So I have a similar level of just intrigue about mystery and how things work and what's going on with things. I'm fascinated about all kinds of the dynamics of life and UFOs and everything. I think it's all really fascinating. I've often told my wife, whenever you're in life and you're doing something and you think life is boring and all I'm doing is standing here doing this thing, don't forget the real physics of life is such that, and this is a real calculation, I believe you could look this up, you're going through space and time at 26 million miles per second. And who knows where? We're just going through space and time, out in or out to some distant thing at an incredible rate, right? But it feels like it's just a normal life sometimes, and there's no mystery to it. But I think if you really look around the corners of life and you really keep your field of vision open and your mind open to things and don't close it off to things, I find that there is a mystery everywhere to something, and that Bigfooting is just one of those mysteries. Some people, I've heard people literally say, I've shaken hands with Bigfoot, I sit down, I talk to him daily. And I just, from my experiences, I'm like, maybe you're a unique person and maybe that's keeping an open mind. Maybe that person really does do that. But I personally can't imagine that really happening with them. I believe that they're a nomadic, really rare to see species of wild human being that, in my personal opinion, I believe the reason why they have and this is a part of the mystery of it to me, the reason why they have a occipital lobe, the top of their head, the way it peaks up at a point, a sagittal crest. That's
correct.
Is that has a really developed gland in it, their pituitary gland, and what's called the crystal cave, it's been noted to be called. And that, combined with the fact that they don't have any distractions like we do. They don't have TVs. They don't have, maybe, I don't know if they do, who knows. I don't think they have as much to worry about their ego, or if they make enough money or did enough that year to feel, like their life is good. But I believe that sagittal crest and the pituitary gland, and the fact that they don't have those distractions, and even more importantly, they have taught each other how to do this, I believe that there's a possibility that they could zip in and out of reality when they need to. And many people have said, the Native Americans have said this, that their rite of passage is to be invisible right in front of you. And almost, I think it's called counting crows, or there's a name for it. The Native Americans used to say, if you can go up and touch another warrior and get away without being shot by an arrow, that is, you've earned your place. The Native Americans say the Bigfoot do the same thing. Maybe not go up and touch somebody. They have to wave their arms and be right in front of you, invisible. And then they've gotten to that point. So how you can prove this, obviously, it's impossible to try and prove unless you want to really listen to the Native Americans, and you should listen to them because they've been around for a long time, and they're not making a lot of this stuff up. It's but in looking at all, that's why I think it really gets me out of the woods, and I'm still interested in this after all these years, because there's things I can't prove, and I'm glad I can't. It's an aspect of life that It's good to have mystery in your life. It's good to find some mystery in life around you. It's good to believe in things you can't understand a little bit and seek those answers out, even if you can't explain it. There's a Buddhist saying, and I could get this wrong, but I believe there's this Buddhist saying that says, we will keep trying to achieve nirvana, even though achieving nirvana is impossible. It's like catching up to light if you're traveling at the speed of light. You can't do it. Never going to explain it. Don't even try. But Bigfooting could be the same thing. It could be unexplainable, period, for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Has there been a time when you have been on an expedition, something happened that is just so far outside the realm of explanation that you just had to be like, I don't know what happened there. It was pretty cool, but it was weird.
Yeah, I have one, and a lot of people speak to this, capturing pictures of or seeing lights around expeditions. A lot of people see, at the one I went to in 2012, they were seeing these blue and red dots of light go between the trees, and couldn't explain it. It wasn't during the lightning storms. It wasn't ball lightning, as some listeners might say, oh, that's ball lightning. That wasn't happening right then. But when I did go out to another place, I won't give the name of this place because it's a little bit coveted amongst the Bigfoot community. I don't want to overload it with people and have hundreds of people out there. And last time some Bigfooters went out there, they were parked in the grass. A sheriff showed up and called in a tribal police, and they kicked them out of the area. So I don't know if it's because people are messing the area up or what, but we were at this one space, and we took about 6 people out, and we're like, let's go for a night walk, see what's going on. And this happened twice at the same location, actually 3 times. I have a picture of one of these things, a really clear picture. It's the same thing that Ron Moorhead saw when he was up and doing the expeditions up in the Sierras, and he recorded all that information. In fact, me, Ron, and this guy, Chris Bynum, went out privately, and just 3 of us went out and sitting out in the woods having rum and cokes and talking about life, and he spoke to the idea of these bars of light that would go by, almost like a lightsaber they would see fly by in the forest. And so this one spot we went to, a friend of mine, Chris, put his foot down on the ground. In this spot, we had a gifting tree area, left a camera there, and then in the middle of the night, about 2 a.m, this bar of light flew by right in front of the camera. And it's got wings on both sides that are undulating on both sides. And it's a square bar of light, so it's not a bird. And the ferns and everything light up a little bit, move out of the way as it comes by, and then they go right back into position. Not back and forth, just they almost like they lifted a little bit as it went through, and then they went right back into their normal position. The same place out there, these are 2 different times. One time I went out with this lady, Erin, who's been on a bunch of shows and TV things and movies that have made of Bigfoot, and Dave Grant. We're walking down the road at this place, and we look around the corner, and we see the weirdest crap you'd ever see sitting there, floating in the air about 6 feet off the ground. It was a blue pyramid on top and a red pyramid on the bottom. And it was about 6 inches I think it was about 6 inches total. If you were right next to it, it'd be about 6 inches tall. And it was the distance from us was I'd say about 100 or 120 feet. And it was just floating. It was just hovering. It was undulating up and down just a little bit. And then it just went blink, it was gone. And I don't know what that was, but the same place where that bar of light and that happened, took another group of people out. We're going down the road. They kept going down the road, and I thought, I'm going to stop here because they're talking. They're being really loud. I'm going to stop in one spot, turn my headlamp off. I'm just going to listen and see what's going on. And then I hear something moving down through the brush towards me, like a big sound, like a bear or something. And so I said, hey, I can hear you, just to let it know I was there. And it stopped dead. It just froze all of a sudden. And then right down the road around the corner, I thought, oh, that must be the guys, their headlamps or something. And nope, it was in almost the same spot. There was a triangular shaped thing that was orange. It had 2 dots on each one of the sides, had 2 orange dots. And it was floating in the air, and then it did the same thing. It just went plink and disappeared. And I can't explain that, but I do have a picture of one of those things in that area, which is fascinating. That's the only area that I've ever seen things like that, where I've heard of lots of people seeing orbs of light all over the place, but that's the only spot where I've actually seen fairly diverse quality of them too, like weird shapes and things I can't even imagine what that is. And I wouldn't even want to try and say what that is, because then I'd be making stuff up. And I don't, whenever I do this stuff and I tell someone, what's an experience you've had? I just say, this is what happened. I don't know what to say about it. I can't even tell you. Because if I start really expanding on that and start saying really what that is, it's part of the Pleiadian craft that landed. So I'm just like making stuff up at that point. Yeah, and that's that amongst many things that have happened out there. We can't explain it, but that's what happened. So
that is really interesting. You're the first person that I've talked to that has mentioned something about a triangular shape. That's very interesting, but you hear all these people seeing things like that, and from your account to orbs in Iowa and Backbone State Park, or you've got the story that Adam Davies shares down in Southern Oregon. And you put all this stuff together and it's, man, what's really going on here? I don't know if we'll ever really figure it out, but it's just really interesting.
Part of that mystery, it's like, maybe that's it. It's just there for you to not figure it out, their experiences to allow human beings, which I really believe like 80, maybe 90, 95% of people out there, maybe a lot of your listeners too, will probably agree. You can talk to some people about Bigfoot, and everybody knows that. Everybody knows the word Bigfoot, just about everybody. 90, 95% of people you talk to about that, one, have never had experience. Mm-hmm. Two, often believe, like 2011, pre-2012, before I really talked to people, I was on that same level. I'm like, man, this Bigfoot guy, he really gets around. You see him up in Oregon.
Right.
You see him in California. He must be taking an Uber everywhere really fast, because this guy is really getting around. And I never thought about, now it's more of my perspective that there's numerous clans of them. There's numerous varieties of them. There's numerous ways of them acting. Some are benevolent. Some are dangerous. You don't want to get near certain areas where they're at. They will hurt you. They have different ways and I'm not saying everyone should be scared of them out there, but I believe a majority of them will let you know when you're in an area you shouldn't be. And if you're paying attention, you really, either it's body language, they start throwing something. I've had one of my vehicles in this one area, it's a coveted space I go to. I don't drive my vehicle in there anymore because 3 separate times it's been electronically broken. Oof. And I've had to spend $5,500 to repair it. And my wife's like, anytime I go out to these spaces, she's like, you're not going to go down that one spot because we can't afford $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 truck repair bill, right? And I'm like, yeah, definitely. I don't want to. The same spot, we had phones were going wacky. The phone batteries were going down to 0, then going back up to 80, then going back down to 15%. The cameras we were using were going out. They had full batteries, completely out overnight time. The truck, one episode, I couldn't open my door as if something had leaned on the top of it and bent the frame. So the door was all stuck and screwed up. The other time I went out there, my starter broke. The guy who took it and looked at it, that was from a shop, said, it's as if a pulse of energy went through it. Like it's fried. And I kept that starter. I still have it because one day I'm going to have somebody forensically go through it and go, what could do that? If it was perfectly fine before, what did that? Another time I went out there and my truck got stuck in 2-wheel high. And it took me 10 hours to drive home 120 miles from the spot. And my friend was like, geez, are we ever getting home? Because we're driving home at 30 miles an hour. Yeah. You can tell the Bigfoots are laughing. They're like, and I don't even know if it's Bigfoot like that. I can't blame it on the Bigfoots. Could be any stick people.
So when you've gone out and done research, has it always been in the state of Washington then?
The reason why I have a very particular reason. I don't know if anybody out there has the same reasoning why they go out. I go out to the same areas almost every time. My reasoning is I want them to get to know me. I want them to see me. They never hurt me. They never, other than damaging my vehicle, they never hurt me. I don't feel like I've ever been threatened. I've been out in a tent, pitch black, by myself, hundreds of yards away from my friends who were parked in a parking lot, and have them get closer and closer, whipping branches on trees, and then tear a branch off a tree right next to my tent. Really loud and kind of unsettling and scary. And I actually posted that online for a while, and maybe I'll repost that one day. I took it down at one point because I thought This was at a point in my life where I'm like, how are people looking this up and thinking I'm crazy? Like, they're going to think I just had my friend walk up and start whipping branches outside my tent. What does that prove? But it's a bigfooting is a fascinating thing. And I don't, sometimes some of the things I've done, I wouldn't recommend anybody go out there and go by yourself and pitch tent in the pitch black by yourself in the middle of nowhere with no one around you. I don't think it's a great idea. There are people in places in the United States, in the world too, broad daylight, have disappeared, let alone doing that. And my wife now will say, hey, you're taking somebody with you, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm taking, all right. I'm safe. I'm a big guy. Nothing's going to take me. But other people have said the same thing and disappeared. Yeah. I don't know if I followed your question right there too. But.
No, I think that's good. And so I'm definitely going to link your channel in the show notes for this so people can check it out. If you're thinking about maybe posting that video again, I might recommend it if for the only reason that maybe someone else has experienced the same thing. And if they see that, they could be like, oh, maybe I'm not crazy. I don't know, but that's up to you, of course. Yeah. But
yeah, bigfooting is a fascinating thing. It's one of those, I've always felt pretty privileged. Oh, and here, let me get back on track. I remember the reason why. This is my specific thing why I go out and do this. So when I go out in Bigfoot, sorry, I got distracted there. I'm in a truck, actually. I have to let you know I'm in a truck, and there's cars going by occasionally. I'm having to sear and do things while I'm talking to you. So the point of me going out to these areas that are really common for me, and I don't go to other states and everything else, is I'm not really interested in going to experience Bigfoots everywhere and all over the place. My point that I have that I've always been really interested in is part of my history is I've done Reiki for many years. I'm 17 years old. I had been a healer in various ways for a long time. I'd really been into that. I'm still really, really into that. I use it to heal myself if I get injured, family members and friends and whatever else. But that being said, I believe that the Sasquatches have, just like the Native Americans do, each clan has its shamanic person. Each clan has one or two that are like the leaders. They really listen to these ones. Each clan has some motherly types that are like the Mother Teresas of the clan, that are like the female ones that they really listen to. They're the patriarchs and matriarchs of the clan. Specifically, though, because I've been very interested in healing a long time, I'm really interested in slowly gaining the trust of these groupings of them. And I would say I've had a particularly large amount of experiences in these areas, maybe more than somebody just shows up and has not been seen by them, right? But I'm always thinking how fascinating it would be to have the one that is like the shamanic one or the medicine one, the medicine man, for them to show up and interact with you. Heck, I'd even be, at this point in my life, interested in just seeing one fully, completely, even though it would still, I think it can still be terrifying. But that's my personal perspective, is to gain the trust of the clans that are in the area. The clans up by Callam in those areas are called, their actual name is the Siatik. The Native Americans, the Makah tribe and everything, know them as the Siatik. They're a tribe of people. And so I'm more interested in gaining the trust of the Siatik than going everywhere and doing expeditions and proving they exist here and seeing a different variety down here and going to California and so forth and meeting everybody who knows everything about Bigfoot. Just, that's my perspective. But I'm sure there's other people out there, I've met many people, they want to go to every expedition they can. They want to meet everybody. They want to go to all the forums that they do. My friends were just at. They want to meet everybody. They want to hear the crazy stories of people with these unusual, weird abilities and the Bigfoots that are in their living room every night. And like, super entertaining. And I think it's entertaining. I go to these things sometimes and I just want to. It's like, sometimes for me, it's like going to a circus. People talk about having a baby Bigfoot in their house and they're taking care of it. And we're like, oh, can we see the Bigfoot? They're like, oh, no, doesn't like to talk to people. I'm like, oh, okay. It's it. Maybe they really do. I don't know. I'm not putting them down saying they don't, but it's fascinating to me that, there's so many stories.
There are. And just, you alluded to it where when you were talking how it was almost like you forgot how that different Bigfoot events happened in the same year. And I think I can understand that because this last year, I've had a lot happen. Is once you start going out there into areas like, I guess it could be anywhere, Iowa or Oregon, your life gets very intense and you start to forget how much can happen within a year, but I've seen stuff happen where I don't discount anything. I give everything a chance, and maybe that's me being not smart, but I've seen weird stuff already, dude, and I'm only into this like a few years. Are there any people that you would recommend trying to talk to that have things to share, but they just never really get talked to?
Most of the people that I used to go out with, I don't anymore. And I don't want to give any reasoning why, badmouth, talk about friendships come or friendships that have gone or anything like this. It's mostly personal choice. I've just got a busy life in other ways, other things to do. I'm raising teenage daughters. I've just got a different life. There was a phase where I really wanted to associate with all of them and be on the phone with them once a week. Okay, what's happening now? Where's the activity? Tell me everything. When are you going out again? Okay, let's meet at the spot. It was just a phase I went through where I really wanted to do that. I learned enough, and then I learned enough to take that to the mountains by myself or with a couple of buddies that I can just hang out with. I don't have to follow. Some of the rules are a little bit stringent. They're out there they want to be scientific about it. And they want to prove they exist. And I don't have to prove they exist to myself or anybody. If somebody says they don't exist, I'll say, oh, have you gone out and tried to have experiences? Like, oh, no, but I've read online. I'll be like, oh, okay, that's their perspective, and that's perfectly fine. Mine is I like to go out with my buddies. I like to have a couple beers and laugh around a campfire. If we hear a weird sound, just take that to note. There's a weird sound happening. If something pushes your tent in or, we put recording devices out and we put a camera here and there away from our campsite to see if anything walks by it, but I can't really recommend anybody in particular that you should call up. I have Ron Moorhead's cell phone, but I'm not giving that.
No.
And
I've talked to Ron. He's a cool guy.
I don't think Ron would be too happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. Yeah. If anybody, so the listeners, if anybody finds his hat, or if you're the person who took his hat, get it back to Ron, man. That's not cool.
Oh, he lost his hat? Oh, dear.
Someone stole it. It's going to end up in a Bigfoot museum one of these days. And it's just that it was his hat. Like, he had it a long time.
That sucks.
But yeah, I know. But yeah, I can't really. And the only reason I can't is that I think if you really want to learn about Bigfoot, first, I think a really good book to read, and I've talked to, what's his name? Jim. He's the guy he's from Ohio, I think, or where is it he's from? He's Meldrum, Jeff Meldrum.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Meldrum. Yeah, right.
He has Dr. Meldrum. I've talked to him before and showed him footprints. Really nice guy, fairly open to things. And he's got a really good book out that I read cover to cover. I was like, wow, that's a good read. Do that, go out with your friends, have experiences, and pretty soon you're going to have an experience with them, and you will be just like those people that you would normally say, hey, I have some questions. Because those same people that go out all the time, when they say, I know everything, I'm a master at this, I've learned everything there is, I see a Bigfoot every day, to me, and I'm not calling anybody out, I'm just saying there are people that say that. I don't think that seems too real to me. And again, keeping an open mind, maybe that's really happening to them. Maybe they are experiencing these things like that. But eventually, if you go out enough, you're going to be like somebody like me who, like you're interviewing, or somebody else that I might meet, and they're like, hey, tell me a Bigfoot experience, or give me some pointers on Bigfoot or whatever else. You'll be just like those people because you'll have gone out enough times for enough years and had enough experiences over enough seasons with enough friends and I have so much audio now that I don't even listen to it anymore. I just what am I going to do with it? I hear a grunt or hear something whack a tree and I'm like, yep, there's one again. Well, that's great. I have better things to do with my life that are more important. It's just not as interesting. And again, that comes on to the level of provability. Then you're having my friends will say, hey, listen to this. Isn't that cool? And they'll be like, wow, that's really cool that you recorded something. And that's a really interesting thing. But trying to prove it to other people. If somebody hears one of my videos I've put out, like I just put one out, it was a short I put out, literally something jumped in the river right next to where I was standing, where I had a campfire going in my tent, and I was just explaining, I was like, whoa. And I went out there and looked at it the next day, couldn't have been a branch, wasn't a rock, no cliff there, couldn't find any footprints, but something big jumped in. People found it interesting, and hundreds of people looked at that video because they're like, oh, Bigfoot jumps in the water kind of thing. Way more important to do stuff like that than to go up to somebody, or I'm not saying don't go up to somebody and ask questions, but I think you get more out of doing that than when you go up to some person, because that person is going to have a perspective, and that perspective might be, I'm going to elaborate on these things to the point where, I've had people, and I won't say, again, not trying to put anybody down, but I'll say that where I've heard stories of people where they're like, yeah, I sit down with a Bigfoot anytime I want. He's in my backyard, and we have questions we ask him, and he just tells us everything. And it's better to have your own experience where you're like, is that possible? Really? If you go out for like over a decade, does that ever happen? Whatever happens when you see one, they often want to get away from you. They don't want to have a conversation with you. They don't want to tell you what happened to them that day. That seems like what's going on. And I can't say that's right for everybody. Some people might say, I don't have the gall, I don't have the lower body parts to go out and put myself in the woods and see what happens in the pitch black. I don't even have friends that want to do it. I don't have the camping gear. And so I think that's when you and I are doing this, we're giving somebody something to listen to where they do get to have an experience. They can feel the fear in somebody's voice. They can hear the story. They can get an understanding of what it's like to actually do these things and do it in areas that are remote. Some of these areas you have to know where you're going. You can get lost on some of these roads that are way out there in the middle of nowhere. If your car breaks down, no one's showing up for you because you're way far out in the middle of nowhere, and things like this. And yeah, just fascinating. To cap that off, if you can find somebody, one of these things, expeditions or something, I think it's just so much fun to talk to somebody about what experiences have you had, what's happened, what's going on. And that can be a very fascinating rabbit hole.
Absolutely. You can definitely learn a lot and apply to a lot of things that you may want to do or may not want to do to your own Bigfooting. But Ghee, it has been such a fascinating conversation with you. You've shared so much, and I just want to say thank you for coming on the show today, and remind people again that we will have the link to your YouTube channel down the show notes. So everyone go over there, check stuff out, subscribe, all that good stuff.
That sounds fantastic. And Jeremiah, one of these days we'll have to physically meet. If you want to come up this season, I'd love to have you on the expedition out to the place out by Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams where we did have experiences before, and see if something happens. So just give me a ring when you want.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Ghee.
Okay, cheers.
Here at Bigfoot Society, our goal is to provide a platform for those that have encountered Bigfoot to share their encounter in a safe and respected environment. But we need to hear your story. If you've experienced something that you just can't explain, please send me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Then we can start the conversation. And I know a lot of you have not shared your encounter at all. It's been 20 years, and it's time that you get this off your chest, and then you can get some well-deserved rest, because I know you haven't been sleeping. I understand what you're going through, and I appreciate every one of you listening.
Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Slaya. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.
These are all in Oregon, by the way. Oak Ridge, Dexter, Fall Creek, Deschutes National Forest area, Cultus Lake, Spirit Lake, Subtle Lake, McKenzie River area, Sweet Home area, the area west of Crater Lake, east of 230 West Diamond Lake Highway, and north of 62 Crater Lake Highway.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.